Mr. President, on a separate topic, last week I met with leaders from Bloomington Normal in Illinois to discuss infrastructure. One part of that conversation I won't forget. They showed me bottles of a liquid that looked like tomato juice or lemonade. It was a strange-looking concoction. Turns out it was well water found in the pipes of more than 80 homes in the community called Colonial Meadows, an unincorporated area of McLean County in Illinois that's often referred to as a county island. I thought instantly of Flint, Michigan. You remember that story, we all do. Decisions were made by local governments which exposed a lot of people to unsafe drinking water, primarily minority populations. Years after that happened, there were still health consequences. We wouldn't want anyone to drink water that was coming from Flint, Michigan until it was cleaned up, and we certainly don't want that to happen when it comes to Colonial Meadows. For nearly 180 people living in my state, when they turn on their faucets, they see Flint, Michigan type water. As I heard about these families, many of them low-income or senior citizens, I thought to myself, how can this happen after Flint, Michigan, and in this year? How can we be at a point where we can't provide clean water to Americans in the year 2026? The answer, of course, is money. It is costly to extend water lines to new areas. And because it costs more than these families can afford, they have to worry about their children bathing, brushing their teeth, or cooking with this type of water that's local. That's why we're talking about when we say the word affordability, that all Americans should be able to access the basic goods they need: food, water, power, housing, and health care. That should be part of the American dream that is a reality. Our job as elected officials is to give Americans a helping hand to afford these necessities. Sadly, the administration has not learned that lesson. On President Trump's watch, prices are up, and Americans are feeling the pain of his misguided policies. More than half of all Americans say President Trump has made the economy worse in his second term. In February, the economy lost 92,000 jobs, and Americans are losing faith that the president cares enough to change that. Through chaotic tariffs, mass firings of federal employees, cuts to federal energy grants, the president has left the economy in a weaker state than when he first came to office. On Monday, the price of oil rose to its highest point in years because of President Trump's invasion of Iran. Americans are already feeling the impact. Mr. President, it was October the 11th in 2002, in this Senate chamber, near the hour of midnight, that a vote was cast to determine whether or not American forces would invade Iraq. I remember it well. I voted no. 23 senators out of 100 voted no, 1 Republican, 22 Democrats. In fairness to President George W. Bush, he understood the meaning of the Constitution when it says Congress should declare war. We had a fulsome debate about whether or not we should invade Iraq. The administration, through Secretary Powell and Vice President Cheney, presented their side of the case. It was pretty clear. They believed there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq that threatened the region, our allies and friends, and even the United States itself. They believed that Saddam Hussein was not trustworthy, had invaded Kuwait, and they believed that we needed to do something about it. They made their case. We debated it at length, and a vote was taken. Approval was given to President Bush to move forward on the invasion of Iraq. As I said earlier, I voted no. I had questioned in my own mind as to whether or not we could prove that there were actually weapons of mass destruction. What happened next? The American forces rolled over Saddam Hussein and returned Kuwait to its independent status. But in the process, they started searching for those weapons of mass destruction. Mr. President, there were no weapons of mass destruction. Our vast intelligence agencies and network were just plain wrong. And as a consequence, we found ourselves in place in the Middle East with an American force of troops on the ground and all the attendant complementary forces and a mission that was hard to explain to anyone. It took us years before we could finally extricate ourselves from Iraq and Afghanistan nearby. In the process, 4,500 American lives were lost. Brave men and women in our military who served our country as required and did it with honor. It was an expensive lesson for America, and one I hope we've learned today. Our invasion of Iran is quite different. It was done by this president without consultation in Congress. There was a last-minute notification that it was going to happen in a matter of hours. That was it. The American people didn't get to hear the debate as to why it was necessary to invade Iran. The war just launched itself, I guess, with the president's approval. The net result of that, of course, is we have so many different explanations from the Trump administration as to why we've invaded Iran. By my count, there are at least 6 or 7 different explanations in a matter of a few days that we've been in that country. The average American can't possibly understand which one is the real reason. It's hard for me to understand it with the classified briefings we've been given. But the fact of the matter is that war is underway. And we feel it, we see it at the gas pumps of America. Yesterday, the average price at the gasoline pump in America was about $3.50 a gallon, 60 cents higher than when the president gave his State of the Union address just a few weeks ago. It's even worse for diesel, which saw prices skyrocket by more than $1 a gallon this month. That means higher costs for farmers who grow food and higher costs for shipping it. In less than 2 weeks, the president's war wiped out a year of stable fuel prices without any clear or coherent end game. In fact, just yesterday, the president lifted sanctions on Russian oil in an ill-conceived attempt to lower gas prices. His sanctions relief will fund Putin's war in Ukraine, while at the same time Russia reportedly shares intelligence with Iran on the placement of U.S. forces. This dizzying mess in the Middle East comes on the heels of one of the largest increases in utility rates American families have ever lived through. Last year in America, electric and gas utility companies requested to raise their rates by nearly $31 billion. $31 billion. That's more than double the increase in 2024. Utility bills are going up. Next to groceries, American people complain they're the toughest bills to pay each month. What caused this large increase? The policies of the Trump administration. The Trump administration cut $8 billion in low-cost clean energy and grid enhancement grants. Think about that. We had appropriated the money. We had it ready for distribution to bring lower-cost energy into the grid in America to reduce the utility bills, and the president stopped it. Why? Because one of his closest friends and supporters, a man named Harold Hamm, announced that he would give the president $1 billion for his campaign if the president would stop the regulation of oil and gas. The president agreed to do that. And as a consequence, American families are paying higher utility bills than ever because of Mr. Hamm. If you ask the president his response, drill, baby, drill. That's his response to everything. It may sound bold and courageous, but it's feckless and counterproductive when it comes to the American family's annual budgets. These grants that were eliminated by the Trump administration would have provided more affordable energy on the grid for families and lowered utility rates. The president stopped it. Without them, utility companies will make consumers pay for grid upgrades in the form of higher energy bills. While this administration is making it harder to generate electricity, they are also allowing A1 data centers to proliferate with no consideration of their impact on energy demand. It's interesting. Public sentiment questions these data centers under the current circumstance until you add one factor. If you required them to have clean energy sources which they developed for the electricity they need, public approval of the data center moves forward. By the year 2030, the electricity demand of data centers is expected to increase by 350%. 350%. One estimate predicts we'll need 100 gigawatts of new power generation to accommodate this growth. That's enough electricity to power 1/4 of American homes, 75 million homes. Electricity for data centers. If there's a clean source, let's talk about it. But if it's going on the utility bills of American families, it's a legitimate question as to whether or not this is a wise investment. The president is weakening our electricity supply when demand is spiking, a recipe to make American families pay more for their energy. Americans will not find any relief at the supermarket either. The prices of many groceries are at record high. The cost of a pound of ground beef is up more than 20% from last year. Orange juice up 28%. Coffee up 33%. I've seen that in the grocery store myself. Prices on baby food items have increased by average of 24%. It's the #1 complaint of American families when it comes to affordability. The president promised Republicans would be a party of working families, but instead American parents have seen the cost of raising a family increase under this administration. These higher costs are explained by President Trump's tariffs, which made it harder for businesses in America to import food we cannot grow at home. And despite the Supreme Court striking down Trump's tariffs as illegal, this administration is doubling down on this tariff trade tax. So the next time you shop at a grocery store and see prices even higher than what you saw last week, remember President Trump said, quote, "Affordability is a hoax," quote unquote, President of the United States. This administration is becoming increasingly detached from the reality that American families face every day. Illinois families are telling me they're afraid they may not be able to pay for those groceries, their power bills, their rent. And for residents like those in unincorporated McLean County, Illinois, some cannot even afford clean water. We must give them a relief, and that requires ending the president's disastrous economic policies. The American people have the last word in November when the election is held. I yield the floor.